So what really makes an action right or wrong? I mean, it's a huge question, right? Today, we're going to dive into one of the most powerful and honestly, one of the most controversial answers out there, consequentialism. And the basic idea? It's surprisingly simple. The morality of an action depends only on its consequences. That's it. Just the outcome.
All right, no warm-up, we're going straight in. Let's start with a thought experiment that gets right to the heart of what makes this idea so challenging.
And look, this isn't some abstract puzzle for a philosophy class. This is a question from the philosopher Peter Singer, and it forces us to look at the choices we make every single day. Every time you buy a coffee, a new gadget, or, a pair of shoes you don't really need, are you making a moral decision? Let's unpack that.
Because this is the reality of the world we live in. The stakes are just staggering. This number isn't hypothetical. It means that our seemingly small, personal choices happen in a world where that exact same amount of money could literally be the difference between life and death.
So, how do we even begin to untangle a dilemma like that? Well, this is exactly what the philosophical system of consequentialism tries to do. It aims to give us one clear, rational principle to guide us.
So here's the core idea, and it's a big one. For a consequentialist, your intentions, they don't really matter. Those hard and fast moral rules you might have heard, like never lie or never steal, they're out the window too. All that matters, the only thing that matters, is the result. The right thing to do is simply the action that brings about the best possible outcome.
You've almost certainly heard this phrase before, right? It's basically the motto for the most famous version of consequentialism, which is called classic utilitarianism. This is the big one, championed by thinkers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill.
So let's break this down. First, it's about maximizing. It's not enough to do something good. You have to do the most good you possibly can. Second, what is good? Well, for these guys, it was simple. Pleasure and avoiding pain. Hedonism. Third, it's universal. It's not just about you or your community. It's about the consequences for everyone. And finally, and this is a huge one, it's agent neutral. That means your happiness is no more important than a stranger's on the other side of the world. Your kid's happiness isn't automatically worth more than someone else's kid. It's a radically impartial idea.
And this is a perfect illustration of that radical impartiality. In one of Plato's famous dialogues, this guy Euthyphro decides to prosecute his own father for murder. His argument? Justice is justice. It doesn't matter that it's his dad. Now, for a classic utilitarian, Euthyphro is kind of the moral hero here. He's being perfectly agent neutral, not letting his personal feelings get in the way of what's right.
Okay, so this formula, maximize pleasure for everyone equally. It seems so simple, so elegant, but what happens when we really push it? When we test it with some pretty extreme thought experiments? Let's see what happens.
All right, imagine this. You're in a hospital, and there are 5 patients. Each one is going to die very soon, and each one needs a different organ transplant to live.
And right at that moment, a completely healthy person walks in for a routine checkup, and the doctor realizes, wow, this person is a perfect organ match for all 5 of those dying patients. So here's the question. Should the doctor kill the one healthy person to save the 5? I mean, from a pure classic utilitarian perspective, the math is brutal, isn't it? Saving 5 lives creates more good than saving 1. The theory seems to say, yes, do it. But something in our gut just screams, no way. It feels like people have a right to live, a right that can't just be erased for the greater good.
Okay, so that transplant case really puts the pressure on that idea of sacrificing one for the many. Now, let's look at a puzzle that challenges a totally different part of the theory, the idea that pleasure is the only thing that's actually good.
This comes from the philosopher Robert Nozick. Imagine a machine you could plug into for life. It would give you any experience you wanted. You could feel the joy of winning a Nobel Prize, of falling in love, of creating a masterpiece. From the inside, it would feel 100% real. You'd never know the difference. But would you plug in, knowing that none of it was real, that you were just a body floating in a tank? Most people, when they really think about it, say no. And that's a big problem for hedonism, because it tells us we value something more than just feeling good. We value reality.
Now, you might think these puzzles are total deal breakers for consequentialism. But what's interesting is that they didn't kill the theory. Instead, they actually forced it to get smarter, to evolve.
So, in response to that experience machine, a lot of consequentialists said, okay, you know what? Maybe we got the good part wrong. They became pluralists. They still think pleasure is good, for sure, but they argue that other things are valuable for their own sake too. Things like real knowledge, genuine friendship, actual freedom, or creating beauty. The goal is still to maximize the good, But the good is now this much richer, more complex idea.
And here's a really clever way around the transplant problem. It's about changing our focus. Instead of judging every single act on its own, that's act consequentialism, we should think about the rules we live by. That's rule consequentialism. So you ask, what would be the consequences if everyone followed a certain rule? We would absolutely not want to live in a world with the rule doctors can kill healthy patients for their organs, right? The fear and the breakdown of trust would be catastrophic. So even if that one specific act might look good on paper, it's wrong because it follows a terrible rule.
All right, so we've got these more sophisticated tools now, a broader sense of what's good, and a new way to think about rules instead of just acts. Let's take all that and circle right back to where we started, to that deeply uncomfortable question about our own choices and global poverty. Because this is a huge criticism. If you always have to act to maximize the good, it seems like it's morally wrong to ever spend money on a movie ticket or a vacation or nice clothes when that same money could save a life. It would make almost every part of normal life morally forbidden. And for a lot of people, that's just an impossibly high standard to live by.
So one way out of this is something called satisficing consequentialism. It's a bit of a mouthful, but the idea is pretty simple. Instead of demanding that you do the absolute best thing every single time, it just says your action is morally okay as long as the outcome is good enough. This opens up some space for us to have our own lives and our own projects. Now, of course, that leaves us with a new, tricky question. What in the world counts as good enough? But it's a way to make the theory a bit more practical.
But even with all these adjustments and new versions, we still end up back here with Peter Singer's powerful principle. He's basically saying, even if you don't have to be a perfect saint who maximizes the good every second, you still have a moral duty to prevent something terrible from happening if you can do it without giving up something of similar importance. And let's be honest, buying a new pair of shoes is just not of comparable moral importance to saving a child's life.
So, as you can see, consequentialism doesn't really give us easy answers. In a lot of ways, it actually gives us much harder ones. It forces us to look beyond our own bubble and really think about the ripples our choices send out into the world. So the question I'll leave you with is this. Now that you have this framework, how do you weigh the consequences of your own actions? What truly matters?